Two kinds. My mother believed you could be anything you wanted to be in America. You could open a restaurant, you could work for government and get good retirement. You could buy a house, which almost no money down. You could become rich. You could become instantly famous. Of course, you can be prodigy too. My mother told me when I was 9. You can be best anything. What does 18 know? Her doctor, she's only best tricky. America was weird. Oh, my mother's hopeless. She had come here in 1949 after losing everything in China. Her mother and father had family home, her first husband, and 2 daughters, twin baby girls, but she never looked back with regret. There were so many ways for things to get better. We didn't immediately pick the right kinds of prodigy. At first, my mother thought I could be a Chinese Sherry Temple. We'd watch Sherry's old movies on TV as though they were training films. My mother would poke my arm and say, 你看, you watch. And I would see Sherry tapping her feet on singing a sailor song, or pushing her lips into a very round arm while saying, oh my goodness, 你看, said my mother's shelly eyes flooded with tears. You already know how, don't need talent for crying. Soon after my mother got this idea about Sherry Temple, she took me to a beauty training school in the Mission District and put me in the hands of students who can barely hold the scissors without shaking. Instead of getting big fake curls, I emerged with an uneven mass of cranky black fruits. My mother dragged me to the bathroom and tried to weigh down my hair. You look like a Negro, Chinese, she lamented, as if I had done this on purpose. This instructor of the beauty training school had to lap off these soggy clumps to make my hair even again. Peter Pan is very popular these days. The instructor assured my mother, I now had hair the length of bodies with strange curls bands like hugged a slant 2 inches about my eyebrows. I liked the haircut, and it made me actually look forward to my future fan. In fact, in the beginning, I was just as excited as my mother, maybe even more, so I pictured this prodigy part of me as many different mages, trying to reach one for size. I was dainty Biernia girl standing by the curtains, waiting to hear the right music. They would send me floating on my tiptoes. I was like a crazed child lifted out of the school manger, crying with holy indignity. I was Cinderella stepping from her pumpkin carriage with sparkly cartoon music filling the air. In all of my imagining, I was filled with a sense that I would soon become perfect. My mother and father would adore me. I would be beyond reproach. I would never feel the need to sucker of anything. But something the prodigy in me become impatient. If you don't hurry up and get me out here, I'm disappearing of good. It won't, and then you will always be nothing. Every night after dinner, my mother and I would sit at the front-made kitchen table. She would present new tests, taking her examples from stories of amazing child. She had read in replies, believe it or not, no good, housekeeping, readers, digits, and a dozen other magazines she kept in a pile in our bathroom. My mother got these magazines from people whose houses she cleaned, and since she cleaned many houses each week, we had a great assortment. She would look through them all, searching for stories about remarkable children. The first night she brought out a story about a 3-year-old boy who knew the capitals of all the states and even most of the Europe countries. A teacher was quoted as saying the little boy could also pronounce the names of the foreign cities correctly. What's the capital of the Finland? My mother asked me, looking at the magazine story. All I knew was the capital of California, because Sacramento was the name of the street which we lived in the Chinatown. Nairobi, I guessed, saying the most foreign word I could think of. She checked to see if there was possibly one way to pronounce Helsinki before showing me the answer. The test got harder, multiplying numbers in my head, finding the queen of the hearts in decks of cards, trying to stand on my head without using my hands, predicting the daily temperatures in Los Angeles, New York, and London. One night I had to look at the pages from the Bible for 3 minutes and then report everything I could remember. Now, John's fire had in riches and honor and in abundance, and that's all I remember, Mom, I said. After seeing my mother's disappointed face once again, something inside of me began to die. I hated the tests. It raises hopes and failed exceptions. Before going to bed that night, I looked in the mirror above the bathroom sink, and when I saw only my face staring back, and that it would always be this an ordinary face, I began to cry. Such a sad, ugly girl. I made high-pitched noises like a crazy animal, trying to stretch all the faces in the mirror. And then I saw what seemed to be the prodigious side of me. Because I had never seen a face before, I looked at my reflection, blinking so I could see more clearly. The girl staring back at me was angry, powerful. This girl and I were the same. I had new souls, willful souls, or rather souls filled with lots of wounds. I won't let her change me. I promised myself I won't be what I'm not. So now, on nights when my mother presented her thesis, I performed listlessly, my head propped on one arm. I pretended to be bored, and at worst, I got so bored I started counting the billows of the foregrounds of the bay while my mother drilled me in other areas. The sound was comforting and reminded me of the sun jumping over the moon, and the next day I played again with myself, seeing if my mother would give up on me before 9 beetles. After a while, I usually counted only 1, maybe 2 beetles at most. At last, she was beginning to give up hope. 2 or 3 months had gone by without any mention of my being a prodigy again. And then one day my mother was watching the 80s rhyming show on TV. The TV was old and the sound kept shouting out. Every time my mother go halfway up from the sofa to adjust the seat, the sound would go back on her. Edie would be talking. As soon as she sat down, Edie would go silent again. She'd go up, the TV broke into loud piano music. She'd sit down. Silence, up and down, back and forth, quiet and loud. It was like a stiff, embarrassing dance between her and the TV seat. Finally, she stood by the seat with her hand on the sound dial. She seemed entranced by the music, a little frozen piano pieces with this mesmerizing quality, soft, quick passages, and then passing later in one before it returned to the quickly playful parts. 你看, my mother said, carrying me over with hurried hand gesture. Look here. I could see why my mother was fascinated by the music. Fascinated. It was being pounded out by a little Chinese girl about 9 years old with a Peter Pan haircut. The girl had the synthesis of Sherry Temple. She was promptly modest like a proper Chinese child, and she also did the fancy strip of a courtesy, so that the fluorescent gaze of her white dress cascaded slowly to the floor like the petals of a large carnation. In spite of these warming signs, I wasn't worried. Our family had no piano, and we couldn't afford to buy one, let alone reams of sheet music and piano lessons. So I could be generous in my comments when my mother bade Moses, the little girl on TV. Please no right, but doesn't sound good. Nothing sound, complained my mother. What are you picking on her for? I said carelessly. She's pretty good. Maybe she knows the best, but she's trying hard. I knew almost immediately I would be sorry I said that. Just like you, she said, know the best because you are not trying. She gave a little harp as she let go. of the sundial and sat down on the sofa. The little Chinese girl sat down also to play an incurable of entire dance, but Grudge. I remember the song because later on I had to learn how to play it. 3 days after watching the 8th streaming show, my mother told me what my schedule would be for piano lessons and piano practice. She had talked to Mr. Chong, who lived in the first floor of our apartment building. Mr. Chong was a retired piano teacher, and my mother had traded houses numbering services for weekly lessons and a piano for me to practice on every day, 2 hours a day from 4 until 6. When my mother told me this, I felt as though I had been sent to hell. I whined and then kicked my foot a little when I couldn't stand it anymore. Why don't you like me the way I am? I'm no genius. I can't play the piano, and even if I can, or go on TV. If you pay me $1 million, I quit. My mother slapped me. Who asked you to be genius? She shouted. Only asked you to be your best. For your sake. You think I won't be a genius? What for? Who asked you? So ungrateful. I heard her mutter in Chinese. If she had as much talent as she has temper, she would be famous now. Mr. Chong, who I secretly nicknamed Old Chong, was very strange, always tapping his fingers to his silent music of an invisible orchestra. He looked ancient in my eyes. He had lost most of the hair on top of his head, and he wore thick glasses and had eyes that always looked tired and sleepy. But he must have been younger than I thought, since he lived with his mother and was not yet married. I mean, old lady Chong once had that was enough. She had this peculiar smell like a baby and had done something in his pants, and her fingers feel like a dead person's, like an old peach I once found in the back of the refrigerator. The skin just slid off the meat when I picked it up. I soon found out why old Chong had retired from the teaching piano. He was deaf, like Miss Oren. He shouted to me, we are both listening only in our head, and he would start to conduct his fantastic silent songs. Our lessons went like this. He would open the book and point to different things, explaining their purpose. Key, treble, bars, no sharps or flats. So this is C major. Listen now and play after me. And then he would play the C scales a few times, a simple chord, and then, as if inspired by an old, unreachable itch, he gradually added more notes and rounding trills and the pounding bars until the music was really something quite grand. I would play after him, the simple scale, the simple chord, and then I just played some nonsense. They sounded like K running up and down on top of garbage cans. Old Chong smiled and applauded and said, very good, but now you must learn to keep time. So that's how I discovered the Old Chong's eyes and were too slow to keep up with the warm notes I was playing. He went through the motions in half-tone to hear me keep racing. He stood behind me, pushing down on my right shoulder for every beat. He balanced the pennies on top of my wrists so I could keep them still as I slowly played the scales and the approaches. He had me curve my hand around an apron and keep like shape when playing chords. He marched stiffly to show me how to make each finger dance up and down, staccato like an obedient little shoulder. He taught me all these things, and that was how I also learned I could be lazy and get away with lot of mistakes. If I hit a wrong note because I hadn't practiced enough, I never corrected myself. I just kept playing in rhythm, and Old Chong kept conducting in his own private review. So maybe I never really gave myself a fair chance. I did pick up the basics pretty quickly, and I may have become a good pianist at a young age, but I was so determined not to try, not to be anybody differently. I needed to play only the most ear-splitting preludes, the most discordant hymns. Over the next year, I practiced like this. dutifully in my own way. And then one day I heard my mother and her friend Linda John both talking a loud, branching tone of her voice so others could hear. It was after church, and I was leaning against the brisk wheel wearing the dresses with stiff white spectacles, until Linda stopped her wearily, who was about my age, was standing farther down the wall, about 5 feet away. We had grown up together and shared all the colonies of two sisters summering, our currents and adults. In other words, for the most part, we hated each other. We saw she was snotty, weary John, and had gained a certain amount of us. Chinatown later is Chinese cheese chomping. She bring home too many chopping, lamented until English Sunday. All day she played chess. All day I've no time to do nothing but thoughts of her winning. She threw a scolding look at Wearily, who presented Joe to see her. "You're lucky you don't have this problem," said Auntie Linda with a sign to my mother. And my mother squared her shoulders and bragged, "Our problem wasn't in yourselves. If we ask Jimmy wash dish, she hear nothing but music. It's like you can't stop this natural talent." And right then I was determined to put a stop to her foolish pride. A few weeks later, old Chong and my mother conspired to have my play in a talent show which would be held in the church hall. By then, my parents had saved up enough to buy me a second-hand piano, a black Walther print with a scared bench. It was the showpiece of our living room. For the talent show, I was to play a piece called "Pitying Child" from Screwman's Sense from Childhood. It was a simple, moody piece and sounded more difficult than it was. I was supposed to be memorized the whole thing, playing the repeat parts twice to make the piece sound longer. But I drawled over, playing a few bars and then cheating, looking up to see what notes followed. I never really listened to what I was playing. I daydreamed about being somewhere else, about being someone else. The part I liked to practice best was the fencing crusty rifle out. Touch the rows on the carpet with the pointed foot, sweep to the side, left leg, bends, look up and smile. My parents invited all the couples from the Joy Luck Club to witness my debut. Auntie Linda and Uncle Tim were there. Willie and her two older brothers and had also come. The first two rows were filled with children both younger and older than ours. The littlest ones go to the first. They recited a simple nursery rhythm square worked out tens on many restaurants. Violins, two hard hops pranced in pink belly tutus, and we bothered all cultisted. The audience was signing in unreason. Anyway, club enthusiastically. When my turn came, I was very confident. I remember my childish excitement. It was as if I knew without a doubt. Then the prodigy sign might really did exist. I had no fear whatever, no nervousness. I remember thinking to myself, this is it. This is it. I looked all over the audience at my mother's blank face, my father's young, until those stiff-lipped smile, wearily looking expression I had on a wild dress I layered with shades of face, and a pink ball in my Peter Pan haircut. As I sat down, I envisioned people jumping to their feet and idiots running up to introduce me to everyone on TV. And I started to play. It was so beautiful. I was caught up in how lovely and I looked at it first. I didn't worry how I sound. So it was a surprise to me when I hit the first one note and I realized something I didn't sound quite right. And then I hit another and then another followed that. A cheer started at the top of my head and it began to trickle down. Yeah, I couldn't stop playing. So my hands were bewitched. I kept thinking my fingers would adjust themselves back, like a chin swinging to the right track. I played the strange jumper through two pieces. The sore note staying with me, staying with me with all the way to the end. When I stood up, I discovered my legs were shaking. Maybe I had just been nervous, and the aliens, like Ultron, had seen me to go through the right motions and had not heard anything wrong at all. I stripped my rifle out, went down on my knee, looked up and smiled. The room was quiet except for Ultron, who was beaming and shouting, Bravo, well done. But then I saw my mother's face, her stricken face. The aliens clapped weakly, and as I walked back to my chair, with my whole face quivering as I tried not to cry, I heard a little boy whisper loudly to his mother. Lei was awful. The mother whispered back, well, she certainly tried. And now I realized how many people were in the aliens. The whole world is sand. It was a wheel of ice blowing into my back. I feel the shame of my mother and the father lay as stiffly throughout the rest of the show. We could have escaped during intermission. Pride and some strange sense of honor must have encouraged my parents to their chairs, and so we watched it all. The 18-year-old boy with a fake mustache who did a magic show and judged funny hops with rending and unrecycled. The breasted girl who with the white makeup who sang from the Mandarin Butterfly and Go honorable mention. The 11-year-old boy who won first prize playing a cheeky violin song that sounded like a busy bee. After the show, the Jones, and the players from the Joy Luck Club came up to my mother and the father. Lots of talented kids, until Lindo said, vaguely smiling proudly. There was something else, said my father, and I wondered if he was referring to me or on our way, or whether he even remembered what I had done. Really looked at me and struck her shoulder. You aren't genius like me, she said matter-of-factly, and if I hadn't felt so bad, I would have pulled her beards and punched her stomach. But my mother's expression was what devastated me. A quarrel blank look like said she had a lot of everything. I feel the same way, and it seems as if everybody were new coming up, like geckos, the sense of an accident, soothing what parts were actually missing. When we got on a bus to go home, my father was humming the busy bee tune and my mother was silent. I kept thinking she was wanting to read until we got home before she shouting at me. But when my father unlocked the door to our apartment, my mother walked in and then went to the back, into the bedroom. No computer, no plan, and in a way, I feel disappointed. I had been waiting for her to start shouting, so I could shout back and cry and blame her for all my misery. I showed my talent show finance on me. I never had to play the piano again, but 2 days later, after school, my mother came out of the kitchen and saw me watch TV. 4 o'clock. She reminded me as if it were any other day. I was stunned. I saw she was asking me to go through the talent show till churn again. I wedged myself more tightly in front of the TV. Tired of TV, she called me from the kitchen for 5 minutes later. I didn't budge. And then I decided I didn't have to do what my mother said anymore. I wasn't her slave. This wasn't China. I listened to her before and I looked what happened. She was the stupid one. She came out from the kitchen and stood in the arched entry of the living room. 4 o'clock, she said once again louder. I'm not going to play anymore. I said naturally, why should I? I'm not a genius. She walked over and stood in front of the TV. I saw her chest was hairing up and down in anyway. No, I said, and I now feel strong, as if my true self had finally emerged. So this was what I had been inside me all along. No, I won't, I screamed. She yanked me by the arm, pulled me off the floor, snapped off the TV. She was frighteningly strong, half pulling and half carrying me toward the piano as I kicked through ridges under my feet. She lifted me up and Until the heartbeat, I was sobbing by now. Looking at her bitterly, her chest was hardening even more, and her mouth was open, smiling quickly as if she were pleased I was crying. You want me to be someone I'm not, I sobbed. I never be the kind of doctor you want me to be. Only two kinds of doctors, she shouted in Chinese. Those who are obedient and those who are follow their own mind. Only one kind of doctor can live in this house. Obedient doctor. Then I wish I wasn't your doctor. I wish you wasn't my mother. I shouted as I said these things. I go scared. I feel like bones and toes in suddenly things crawling out my chest, but it also feel good, as if this unfelt side of me had surfaced at last. Too late, Changelis, said my mother cheerily, and I could sense her anger rising to this breaking point. I wanted to see it spill over. And that's when I remembered the babies she had lost in China, the one we had never talked about. And I wish I'd never be born. I shouted. I wish I would died like then. It was as if I had said the magical words, Alikamza. And her face went black, her mouth closed, her arms went slack, and she backed out of the room, stumped as if she was blown away like a small brown laugh, seeing bitter like this. It was not the only disappointment my mother felt in me. In the years that followed, I felt her so many times, each time asserting my own will, my right to fall so sure of exceptions. I didn't get strange as I didn't become class president. I didn't get into Stanford. I dropped out of college. For unlike my mother, I didn't believe I could be anything I wanted to be. I could only be me. And for all these years, we never talked about the disaster and the recession of my terrible accusation afterward the piano bench. All remained unchecked like a bacterial that was now unspeakable. So I never found a way to ask her why. She had hoped for something so large that failure was inevitable. And even worse, I never asked her what frightened me the most. Why had she given up hope? For after our struggle at the piano, she never mentioned my playing again. The lesson stopped. The light to the piano was closed, shutting out the doors, my mystery and her dreams. So she surprised me. A few years ago, she offered to give me the piano for my 13th birthday, and I had not played it in all these days. I saw the offer as a sign of forgiveness, a 10 hours burden removed. Are you sure? I asked shyly. I mean, would you or Dad miss it? No, it's your piano, she said firmly. Always your piano. You only one can play. Well, I probably can't play anymore. I said it's been years. You pick up fast, said my mother, as if she knew was certain. You have natural talent. You could be genius if you want to be. No, I couldn't. You just know trying, said my mother, and she was neither angry or sad. She said it as if to announce a fact that could never be disproved. Take it, she said, but I didn't at first. It was enough that she had offered it to me, and after that, every time I saw it in my parents' living room standing in the front of the bay windows, it made me feel proud, as if it were shining properly. I had to bed. Last week, I sent a tuner over to my parents' apartment and to be the piano recognition to purely sentimental reasons. My mother had died a few months before I had been getting things in order for my father. A little bit at a time. I put a jewelry in special scale punches. The sweater she had knitted in yellow, pink, bright, orange, all the colors I hated. I put those in month-proof boxes. I found some old Chinese silk dresses, the kind with little slits up the sides. I rubbed these old slick against my skin and wrapped them into a tissue and decided to take them home with me. After I had the piano tuned, I opened the lid and touched the keys. It sounded even richer than I remembered. Really, it was a very good piano. Inside the bench were the same exercises, notes with the handwriting skills. The same. 你为什么把瓦删了 ？The second hand. 你为什么把瓦删了 ？The second hand music book. 为什么？With covers held together with yellow tape. I opened up the sum book to the dark little pieces I had played the recital. It was on the left-hand side of the page. Blending child, it looked more difficult than I remembered. I played a few bars, surprised at how easily the notes came back to me. And for first time or so seemed, I noticed the pieces of the right-hand side. It was called perfectly contented. I tried to play this one as well. It had lighter monthly, but the same flowering racing, and it turned out to be quite easy. Pleading Child was shorter but shorter, heavily concentrated was longer but faster. And after playing them both a few times, I realized they were two halves of the same song.